Hi folks, thank you for joining. As you may have seen in the intro video, my name is Nick Neese, and I am a current high school social studies teacher. Today, I really wanted to focus on two things that I thought were very important. The first is going to be about just reflecting in general. The second thing is going to be about what is called the Sistema de Castas, also known as the Castas system of Latin America. The first portion I'd like to mention, reflection, really has to do with the work that I consistently do, the work that the other folks in this collective consistently do, and something that is very valuable to everyone. It is important that we take time to really consider the ways that we contribute passively or actively to our racist society. It's hard to consider that we have done things that are racist, that we think things that are racist, but ultimately we do have to consider what we have and have not done in order to make change. And it's really important that you do take the time. One thing that's important as well is to consider what actions you plan to take to promote an anti-racist society, ultimately to actively counteract the racist policies, the racist actions of others, and things like that. So reflection being one part, that kind of leads into the second part, which is some information. If you need to take some time, feel free to pause the video in order to really think about what we're going to be talking about today, which is really a central history of racism. We know that the Spanish came to Latin America and devastated the indigenous population through murder and disease. We also know that the native populations were enslaved and new slaves were brought from Africa as well. This led to the development of what is known as the Sistema de Castas, or the Casta system. It was a way to classify the different racial groups into a social and governmental hierarchy so that the people in New Spain, the area that is now Mexico and most of Central America, could know who was in power. Because this system was based primarily on race, but also based on geography at birth, it made it so that white people, specifically the Spanish, had power, and indigenous people and Africans, whether they were enslaved or not, had very little power to no power. There was an initial split of 5 different groups. The first group were known as the Peninsulares, or the Spanish who were born in Spain and came to New Spain. The next group were called the Criollos. These were Spanish people of pure Spanish blood who were born in New Spain. Then there were Mestizos. This group was made of Spanish and indigenous blood, so essentially a mixture between the two. The group below them would be known as the Indios or Indígenas. These are the indigenous people, so the people who were part of the Aztecs and other native groups to modern Mexico and Latin America. Finally, there were what the historical term is negros, which would be Africans or African slaves. Years after the Casta system actually ended in Latin America, which was in the 1800s, the early 1800s, there were paintings that were commissioned in order to tell the story of the Casta system that showed the different classifications. And it showed that beyond this initial group of 5, it got much more complicated and harder to actually tell. People would actively change groups or birth children so that their children and themselves could move into different groups. So if someone wanted to gain more rights, then they may try and have a child with a Spaniard, or they might try to have a child with a mestizo because there is some Spanish blood. In the early 19th century, revolutions in New Spain led to the dissolution of New Spain and the Sistema de Castas, and the creation of our more modern countries of Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, etc., after centuries of rule in these native lands. The actual system of hierarchy that was developed, this system that separated people based on race and gave more power to some over others, specifically those who were white. It continues today. When the revolutions happened in New Spain, the people who led them were not the indigenous people. They were not the African slaves. The people who fought them were. The people who led them, though, were the criollos. The only reason they started the revolution is because they were just below, right here, the Peninsulares. The Peninsulares had power because they were born in Spain. That was their only call to power. The criollos had no access to the jobs that came with it, and so they started a revolution using the indigenous people and the Africans as the fighting force. Ultimately, though, those who fought in this revolution did not gain the same rights as those who led it, because the people who led it created a new governmental system that maintained the hierarchy. This is why today, in Latin culture especially, there is a major issue of colorism. This idea that though there are people of color in Latin America, those who have lighter skin are historically the ones with more power and the ones people see as better, when in fact that is wholly untrue. This is why Afro-Latinos and other folks of color in Latin America continue to fight against colorism. These origins reflect that the system that many call broken today is actually working exactly as planned. The idea that the whitest and the lightest of society have power is nothing new, and in fact is intentional. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that this provided some new information for you so you have a better understanding of some of the origins for our racist hierarchical society. Each week, we will be highlighting a different organization that we also think has value and contributes to the movement in support of Black lives, because ultimately that is what we're doing here. This week, we thought we would keep it straightforward and focus on an organization that has been calling for this change. And so we believe it is important to highlight and ask that people donate and shop from blacklivesmatter.com. The link and information will be in the description box below. So please make sure that you follow them, listen in for any information that they provide, and really take stock of what the movement is about. Again, thank you for viewing this video, and stay tuned for more from the other members of our group. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.